Sponsorship. The gentleman I'm going to call up now to talk to us about sponsorship is Kalvin D. He is from Bowling Green. He's a personal friend of mine. He's a great guy. I think he'll give us a good message. Kalvin? But his nickname is Bucci, in case nobody knows.
My name is Kalvin. I'm an addict. Oh, man. I don't know. I came to this convention thinking that I was going to get to enjoy the convention. And I was asked yesterday to do this workshop. And because I have a sponsor, he's taught me a lot about service work. And he's always told me if someone asks you to speak, not to say no. So here I am. Been kind of nervous about this all day because I've been around for a while, but I still get nervous about doing this. I found some time to pray and get in touch with the God of my understanding. I came around in December of '99 and came in through an outside program. I got sent to treatment. I didn't want to be here. They pretty much told me you can either do this year, this treatment program, or you can go to jail for 7 years. It wasn't much of an option for me that I was going to do this year. And, I had reservations. I was going to get the year done, go see my PO, do what I want to do. I knew how to pass a piss test. I knew how to act. I knew exactly what to do to get by with my using. And I was in treatment, and they told me I needed to get a sponsor. I didn't know what a sponsor was. They gave me an IP. I read it. And the first thing I said was, I'm not telling nobody shit about me. They don't need to know. Because in the past, even before I picked up my first drug, when I shared my secrets with somebody, they ran out and told them. So, I had that trust issue from the get-go. It wasn't about just being honest with somebody. I had learned to lie at a very young age, and I was good at it. I was real good at it. I was so good, I convinced myself of a lot of things. I always lied to myself. I did 35 days of treatment. I came back to Bowling Green. I went to my first NA meeting here in Bowling Green, and I remember it just like it was yesterday. I walked into the room. I was late. They were having a candlelight meeting in the basement of this church, and it was dark. The first thing I thought about was I used in the basement, in the dark, by candlelight, so nobody could see what I was doing. But I lived alone. I seen this guy in there that I had used with, and I said, he owes me. Because, when we were out using, he stole some stuff from me. And because I didn't beat his ass, he owed me. And so I walked up to him and asked him how much time he had clean. He told me he had 2 years. And I was like, all right, you're going to be my sponsor. He said, we don't do it that way. He said, you can ask me to be your sponsor. I said, okay, you owe me, you're going to be my sponsor. He was 19 years old. He was best friends with my brother that was still using. And I asked him how long he had been in Bowling Green, and he told me he'd been there for 2 years, and he had been in the program. So I quit being an asshole and said, would you be my sponsor? And he said yes. Now I did this out of resentment because I resented him. He took something from me, you know, and I couldn't catch him to do anything about it, and I was still angry about that. He told me about the steps. I was like, well, I don't know if I want to do those or not, you know. I'm in this other program. I got all this homework to do. I live in a halfway house. I got curfews. I got this. I got that. I don't know if I'll have time to do that. He said, if you want to stay clean, you'll do it. I said, well, you know, I got these piss tests every day. I got court once a week. I got all these other groups to go to and meetings to go to. I can stay clean, but, you know, I don't need to do steps. He said, if you want me to sponsor you, you'll do the steps. All right, you know, I was cool with that, you know. He started giving me these assignments before I started working on my steps. Read my book. I don't have one, you know. He got me a book. I thanked him, and I started reading it. I got like the first couple of chapters done, and he came to me, he said, what's on the very first page of our basic text? I showed him the page, and he said, no, what's on the very first page of our basic text? Well, I kept going to the page with the writing on it. He said, no, this blank page. This is what you know about recovery. And I was 34 at the time, and him being 19, we didn't hit off too well, you know. I proceeded to tell him that I wasn't stupid, that I knew what was on the first page and it had writing on it. And he said, no, this first page has absolutely nothing on it, and that's what you know about recovery. Well, then I proceeded to tell him that I'd been to treatment for 35 days, and I know this and I know that, and he said, you don't know shit. Well, by that time, I was ready to hit him in his mouth. And, you know, I talked to another person, and they told me, you need a sponsor to stay clean this program. And I let them know that I only plan to stay clean for a year, that I had other plans, that when the year was over with, I was going to resume my life. And I told my sponsor this at the time, and he proceeded to tell me, think back. If you're going to resume your life, what was your life like before you got here? And that was the first time I heard anyone say, remember your last day using. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. So, okay, I'm going to get on board, you know. He gave me all these assignments to do, and I was doing those assignments, and you know, I didn't have a car at the time, and I lived downtown, and my job was way out past the mall, and you know, I'd get up and go to work every morning at 4 o'clock and walk home every afternoon. And he started coming by my job and giving me rides every day. And you know, I asked him why was he doing that, and he said it gives us a chance to get to know each other. You know, I thought I knew him because, you know, I sold to him. He was at my house all the time because he was my brother's friend. And, you know, and I'd seen some of the things he had done in his addiction, but I hadn't seen what he had done when he was clean. And, you know, we developed a relationship that I'll never forget. You know, he had me to work on my steps. And, you know, we were working on the first step, and we were going to retreats together. And we were hanging out, going to meetings, going out to eat, and drinking coffee. And I wasn't a coffee drinker when I got here. But I seen everybody else doing it. I think, well, if they doing it, they staying clean, I can drink some coffee too. And, you know, I had got 6 months clean, and he was getting ready to celebrate 3 years. When he showed up late for his own celebration, I started to get worried. And, you know, I got with his sponsor and his grand sponsor and his brother, which was in recovery, and we all went out on a camping trip, and he didn't show. And, you know, we were there for like 2 days, and we got a phone call, and I already knew what happened. You know, I was like, well, he's not going to make it, and, you know, we'll talk about it later. And I was like, he relapsed. And because the number he called from was my brother's cell phone. So I already knew. You know, even though he didn't stay around long, you know, he was showing me about this program. He was showing me about the 12 steps. He was showing me about intimacy. You know, I didn't know what intimacy was when I got here. You know, I always thought if you got intimate with somebody, you had sex with them. That's the only intimacy I knew. And see, growing up in my family, we didn't hear the word love. Nobody hugged. You know, I never saw my parents kiss, ever. You know, I just thought that's the way life was. You know, you just kind of went your own way. And so, you know, I was kind of devastated by that thing, and we got back to a meeting on that Monday night, and I had never shared in a meeting before. And that was the first night I spoke up, and, you know, and I asked for help, and I needed another sponsor. And I immediately got one that night. I didn't look around for what I needed. I just looked around for what I wanted. And I seen somebody that sort of acted like me. You know, like I said, I had 6 months, and this gentleman had more than 6 months. He had multiple years, but he was acting like me. So I'm going to get him, which was my grand sponsor at the point in time. And that didn't last long either. You know, the one thing that I've learned in this program is, for me, sponsorship is finding somebody that can help me in my program. You know, we had a lot of things in common. And we went out and did things every night. But when it come time to talk about recovery, you know, we talk about that in a meeting. And it just didn't work. And, you know, and I had some sponsee brothers at the time, and, you know, our relationship lasted for like 3 months. And at 9 months clean, my sponsee brothers asked me to sponsor them. And I immediately said no. And then I called my grand sponsor, and he said, oh, yeah, you need that in your life. I was like, I don't know how to do this. He said, there's a basic text, and how it works and why. There are IPs. You know how to stay clean. Find you a new sponsor and start sponsoring these guys. I said, okay. You know, I asked this guy to sponsor me. I had like, I was going to have a year in a week at that time. And I asked him to sponsor me, and he said he couldn't because he didn't have a sponsor. And he was looking for a sponsor. And so I asked this other guy, and he said he was looking for a sponsor. And I was like, damn. What happened was God was working in my life and also in their lives, because the first guy I asked went to the guy that I asked a second time. And so what happened was I got the sponsor I wanted. the sponsor I needed. The guy that I asked the second time is now my grand sponsor. And he was in the process of looking for a new sponsor. So, I got in the sponsor tree, and they were talking about working steps and traditions. Now, I heard the traditions read in a meeting, but I didn't know what they were. I had never picked up my How It Works and Why to read them, because I just thought I could read them off of this right here, and I was going to learn about them, and I was going to watch how people were acting, and I was going to learn about them. And what I understood is that first I worked my steps to learn about me, and then I worked the traditions to deal with you. And so I got my sponsor, and he immediately said, you got to do your first step again. And I was happy about it this time. I wanted it. I had a year clean. I was getting ready to get out of this other program. I was still living in a recovery home because I was scared to go back to my hometown. And he was talking about we need to form a relationship. The only relationship I ever had with men turned out to be bad ones. I couldn't get along with my father because he was just like me. We were both stubborn. We were set in our ways. We were never close. I couldn't go to him and tell him anything about me. I was always scared of him. So anytime it comes to having a relationship with a man, it just didn't work. And so I got in this new tree, and they was talking about having a sponsorship retreat. What the fuck? They said it's a bunch of men that get together in our tree, and we camp out for a weekend, and we eat, we fart, we talk about us, and we leave. And I thought, I'm not going. And my sponsor said, I got to go, because my sponsor told me I had to go. Because your grand sponsor told him that he had to go. So if I'm going, you going, and your sponsors are going. And we all loaded up from Bowling Green, and we drove to this place in Indiana, Lincoln State Park. And we got there, and it was raining. And I was kind of pissed off because I was going to play golf with my sponsor that day. And he said, we'll go play. We went and played golf, and we talked. And he was like, don't be scared. This is going to help you. This is going to help me. We'll get a chance to learn about each other. And I was like, dude, I don't want to do this. So we pulled up at this retreat. I get out of the truck, and I see a man with long white hair, this beard, and they were throwing hatchets and shit. And he had a knife on his side that was this damn long, and they came in on Harleys and big trucks, and they was wearing these leather jackets and shit, and I said, what the fuck have you got me into? So I sit around for a little while, and I was scared to death. And then I looked around and said, Mike, am I the only black one here? He said, it looks like it. I said, man, they gonna lynch me. I was just scared to death, and I was like, damn. But see, now I don't know why that bothered me, because I grew up in a town where all the black people were my family. And I didn't get along with them, so I didn't get along with anybody, And he just told me to relax. And Rick W. walked up to me. Like I said, he had this long hair and had these big ass moccasins on. And, come here, boy! I was like, oh shit. What step you on? 2. Let's talk about it. I was so scared I didn't know what to say. I look up and they're breaking out basic text and shit, and I'm thinking, where you getting all this shit from? All I see is knives and guns and hatchets. But in the trucks and on the motorcycles, they had their literature with them. And we sit down, and me being scared, they started talking about working the steps and talking about me, and because they asked me, how are you doing today? And I said, fine. Wrong answer. I said, I am fine. Yeah, you are fine, but how you doing? You know, I was like, I don't know. And by the time I left that camp out, I knew something about me. With a year clean, I knew about my second step. I knew more about my first step. I knew more about my sponsor. And I knew about my sponsor tree. You know, and out of 10 years, I've only missed 2 of those retreats. You know, hell, I threatened to quit my job if I don't get to go to one of those. And you know, where I work, they're really good about letting me go on these things. And of course, I work here in this hotel. And you know, they know my recovery is important to me. They know the sponsorship is real important to me. You know, there have been days that my sponsees show up at my job, and my boss will tell me, hey, you need to go and talk to him, he looks bad. My boss has my sponsor's number, because there are days that when the old me shows up and he threatens to call my sponsor. I called bullshit on him one day, and I looked up, my sponsor was standing outside. You know, like I said, when I came around here, I wasn't going to tell anybody anything about me, because in the past, when I told people who I was, they ran. So I wasn't about to come in these meetings and tell you who I was, because I was so afraid that what was going to happen again was that you were going to run, and that I was going to run. But this time I didn't have anywhere to run to. You know, I had beat myself down with drugs. You know, I was so scared of who I was, I didn't want to learn about me. And when they told me that I had to work the steps to stay clean and learn about me so I could change who I was like really, really against that. You know, I hated who I was when I came here. It wasn't about a dislike. I hated who I was. I was not like anyone else in my family. You know, I was different. I was told I was different. And so, you know, working on the first step and understanding that I'm powerless, I didn't want to be powerless. I wanted some control of some shit, you know? And my sponsor told me, could you control your using? No. Well, you can't control shit about you right now either. You know, when people tell me the truth, I don't like it. I get pissed off. You know, I've got some sponsees in the room right now. They know I get pissed off all the time because they tell me shit about me. And I'm okay with that, because I understand that sponsorship is a two-way street. You know, when I first started sponsoring, I was pretty much what they call old school. You came in a meeting, you went to the bathroom before the meeting, you got your coffee before the meeting, you didn't talk in the meeting, you didn't get your ass up in the meeting, and if you had a cell phone and I saw you on it, I was going to get up, get your cell phone, and say, see me after the meeting. I was called a tyrant at one point, and I was okay with that. You know, sponsorship got to be, it was more like the properties and prestige thing than it was about service. You know, because I had like 18 months clean and I had 20 sponsees. And you know, it was, you go to a meeting, you sit where I can see you. You better not talk. If you do, you better be sharing in the meeting. We have this at my house on this night. You need to be there to find a new sponsor. That's how I was when I first got here, and my sponsors let me know real quick. We don't do it that way. You are supposed to be loving, caring, and understanding, just like the God of your understanding. I didn't know what that was, you know. I liked being a sponsor. I liked everybody knowing that I was a sponsor, and in the process of having all those sponsees, I lost who I was. You know, what little bit I knew about me, I lost it. And you know, I was suggested to get rid of some of my sponsees, and I didn't want to do it, but I like following suggestions, because when I follow suggestions, my life becomes easier, so much easier. You know, when I try to run shit without running stuff past my sponsor, my life becomes crazy. You know, I've had my sponsor for 10 years. Same one, knows me better than my father ever did, knows me better than anybody on this earth, because over the years we've developed a relationship that I mean, if my love interest could be anything like the relationship I have with my sponsor, oh my God, they would be wonderful. Because I can be real honest with my sponsor. You know, I tell him everything. You know, I may not want to, but I do it anyway. You know, he shows me unconditional love. You know, I can't do that with everybody. I just can't. You know, I can honestly say that I haven't gotten there yet. You know, I still work my steps. You know, I've been clean for 11 years. I try my best to attend meetings on a regular basis. You know, I got called out on that shit about 20 minutes ago because, I was talking to my great-grand sponsor, and my sponsee was standing there. How many meetings you make a week? I just kind of looked at him and, you know, 2 or 3. You know, my sponsor's name is Mike S., and his sponsor's name is James A. And James' sponsor is Rick W. Rick's sponsor is Mikey P. Mikey P's sponsor is Mr. Bill. Mr. Bill's sponsor is Neil. Neil's got 37 years clean, and he makes 5 meetings a week. I got called out because I got 11 years and I make 2. I was like, wow, good for him. And I hope that if I'm still around and clean that long, I can go to 5 meetings a week. But, you know, this program has taught me to have a life outside the rooms. You know, I have a job. I don't particularly like it at this point in time, but it pays my bills. I do enjoy what I do. You know, I'm a cook. I love to cook, as y'all can tell. You know, I love to cook. And, you know, I have other interests outside the rooms. I play softball. Way too much softball. And, you know, this year I'm trying to do something different. You know, instead of playing for 5 teams, I'm only playing for 2. You know, instead of playing softball Monday through Sunday, you know, I'm working on playing just 4 nights a week. And I plan on hitting more meetings because, you know, where I'm at right now is because my sponsor has a 3rd shift job and I haven't got a chance to talk to him, you know, I've been running my own program. And I suggest that you don't do that. I don't care how much time you got. It's not a good thing to do. But I do have a support group that I run things by. You know, like I said, I have sponsees, and some of those have some time. And I talk to them. You know, they give me suggestions. Some I follow, some I don't. You know, we go over our steps together. You know, for me as a sponsor, you know, because I work my steps and my sponsor works his, and his sponsor works his. You know, my tree that I'm in is you got to work your steps or get out of the damn tree. And I'm okay with that. You know, sponsorship has taught me so much that, you know, I went to one of those retreats. I had like 4 years clean. Then a couple of days before that, my father had a stroke, and he was doing okay. You know, I could talk to him. You know, he couldn't talk much, but I could talk to him. And you know, I talked to my father for a while, and I go call my sponsor, and you know, he would say, you know, go hang out with him for a while. You know, before my father had a stroke, he kind of hung out with me. You know, if I didn't call him every day, he was hanging out at my house wondering where the hell I was and what I was doing. Because I was clean now, and I wasn't running around trying to kill myself. So, you know, my father was laying in his hospital bed, and because of sponsorship with my sponsor and the intimacy that I developed with him, I took that and I used it with me and my father. And we started having a good relationship. And so now he's laying in his hospital bed, you know, paralyzed on one side. And, you know, I spent some time with him. And, you know, I told him, you know, I have my retreat this weekend, but I'm not going to go because I'm going to stay with you and hang out with you. And he looked at me and he said, you go every year. And I said, yeah, but this time is different. He said, no different. You know, he couldn't say full sentences. And I was like, yeah, it's different. I want to hang out with you. He said, no different, go. You know, I was like, no, I'm going to stay here. You know, and I talked to my mom, and she said, you do what your daddy says. You didn't do it when you was growing up. You got clean, and you started listening to what he was saying, so do what your daddy says. So I called my sponsor, and he said, do what your daddy says. So I went to the retreat. You know, and while I was there, you know, you're not supposed to have your cell phones out looking at them and texting and all this stuff. And, you know, I told him what the circumstance was, and I kept waiting on the phone call. You know, Saturday night about 10 o'clock, God showed up. I had a workshop on the man I love, the man I hate, my father. I thought, you sons of bitches. You know, and I shared, and I was talking about how me and my father had gotten close. And about 10:05, I got the phone call telling me I needed to come back to Bowling Green. So I came back to Bowling Green, and when I got to the hospital, my dad was in a coma. And they told me that he wasn't going to come out of his coma. It was only a matter of time. And if I wanted to talk to him, that I needed to do it then. And God showed up again. Because I was working on my 9th step, and I was working on my dad. And I got a chance to sit and start talking to my dad. And then God really showed up. For about 30 minutes, my dad came out of his coma. And we talked. And I had told him everything that I'd ever wanted to say to him. You know, I told him about me. You know, I was like, Dad, you know, there's not going to be a Kalvin. Oh, fuck, I don't know. My name is Kalvin Brown Jr. I said, there's not going to be a third. You know, I'm gay. You know, I know. You know, I was scared of that my whole entire life of telling him that, and he already knew. You know, I told my sponsor before I told my dad. He said, all right. You know, I told him I loved him. And he closed his eyes, and I went home. And because I've learned to be intimate through sponsorship, there were guys that drove from Louisville and were sitting on my front porch at 3 o'clock in the morning when I came home from the hospital. You know, I can't ever remember going through anything when I was using and my dope dealer would show up on my front porch to support me. You know, I can't remember my dope dealer knocking on my door and said, "Oh, buddy, do you need some help? I'll be here for you." I don't remember that. But all I remember in 2004 was those guys showing up on my doorstep. My sponsor calling me and telling me that just hang on, that it's going to be all right. I'm here for you. When I was out there using, I never heard anybody say that they was there for me. I heard my family say, "You need to leave." I heard my so-called friends say, "You've gone too fucking far, get the hell away from us." I never heard any of that stuff when I was using. And I come to this program and they tell me I need to get a sponsor and that I need to work on me. And I start to work on me and I've got this wonderful relationship with this man that's like my father, my brother, my best friend, all rolled into one. And I'm like, wow. You know, and, you know, when I buried my father, my sponsor was there. And my great-great-grand-sponsor was there. And some guys out of the tree was there. Some sponsees was there. And I'm like, wow, you didn't even know my father. And they said, "We know you." I'm like, wow, okay. 2 years later, I buried my mother. And those guys were there again. You know, I went through a very, very bad relationship. And I was just starting over on step one again. I didn't talk much to my sponsor about this relationship. Because at that point in time, we were both going to meetings. We were both sitting in meetings just tearing each other apart. And at some point, I felt like that our relationship had split my home group. And, you know, I didn't have to tell him anything because everybody told him, you know. And I was going over my step with him, and I remember going over step 2, and he had me to do my step over that relationship. And, you know, we got done with it, and he looked at me, and he said, you know, your step 3 is going to be real important to you. It's about turning your will and life over to a care God of your understanding, and I hope you got a God today. Because if you don't, we'll be burying you next. You know, and I saw them tears coming out of my sponsor's eyes. Because I knew he was right. You know, I remember what the drugs done to me before I got here. And so I came in this program and found another drug, and it was called a relationship. And my sponsor told me a long time ago that relationships are a very painful area in our life. And I was like, is that just my sexual relationships? Or is that with any relationship? And he said, any relationship. You know, at that point in time, I wasn't much into writing up my steps because I was hurting. You know, I would call him every day. He would call me every day. You know, I couldn't stay here at my job. I would leave because I was in so much pain. And I would call my sponsor, and I was like, man, I can't do this no more. And he said, are you wanting to use? And I said, no, I'm just wanting to die. It's not about using right now. And I can remember him keep telling me the same thing, just hold on. If you can get through the storm and make it out on the other side, your life's going to get better. You know, I dug a hole so deep with this relationship, I couldn't understand anything that my sponsor was saying to me. You know, I started to withdraw from him and everybody else in the program. You know, and I would go to those sponsorship retreats, and I would, you know, get in the kitchen, because that was my thing. I'd get in the kitchen and I'd cook, and I was like, I would just bury myself into that, and I wouldn't have to talk about what was going on with me, and they would ask me, hey, how you doing? I'm doing good, man. I'm doing great. Go take a shower and cry. You know, because those guys were sort of like my sponsors over the years. They knew I was lying. And, you know, we got down to the heart of the whole problem. You know, I wasn't willing to let go. You know, my sponsor was telling me about a familiar pain. And I had been in that relationship for 2 years, and I had took the verbal abuse for so long that it was so familiar to me, and I was so used to it. And, you know, if we didn't have anything, we just had that verbal abuse, and I wanted to hold on to it, because if I did that, I could hold on to him for a little while longer. And until one day he threatened to hit me, and it wouldn't have been good, you know. He weighed like 140 pounds, and I weighed like 240, and I was gonna hurt him. You know, I really, really wanted to hurt him, and you know, sponsorship, I called my sponsor and I told him what I wanted to do. And he said, let's look at it. What happens if you hit him? I said, I'm gonna feel good. For how long? A little while. I wonder if you hurt him. Well, fuck, he's gonna go to the hospital. Because if I hit him, he's going to the hospital. He said, what about you? I said, I'm going to jail. I'm okay with that today. I got my bail money. What message are you sending to your sponsees? I wasn't thinking about that. And I was like, not a good one. He said, it's time you let go before you go to jail. So I did. It was painful. It was a long, drawn-out process. I didn't get high. I didn't want to use. I just wanted that pain to end. And I did it through step work. I did it through being very honest with my sponsor. And I did it through some outside help. You know, I went and seen a therapist. And through talking to my sponsor and the therapist, you know, I'm standing here today. I didn't go to jail. And he's happy in his life somewhere, you know. And, you know, today I got a group of sponsees. Some are difficult, some are easy. Some like to do what they want to do, and I have to let them do what they want to do. Because my sponsor let me do what I wanted to do. And I asked him why. I said, why do you let me do the shit that I do? Why don't you stop me? He said, you're not going to learn if I stop you every time. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, if you make a mistake and that mistake hurts, you're not going to repeat it again. I said, but if you stop me ahead of time, I won't have to feel that pain. But if I stop you every time, you're not going to feel nothing. And if you do get in that pain, you're going to get high. So he lets me do what I do. I'll suffer the consequences from it. Especially when it's bad. I'll suffer the consequences. You know, I haven't been the best sponsor in the world. You know, I've been told to be honest, so I'm going to get honest. When I first started sponsoring, I had a problem with sometimes making advances towards certain sponsees. You know, I can't sit here and tell you, oh, it was a mistake. I knew what the fuck I was doing, and it wasn't a mistake. Not only did I hurt the newcomer, I hurt myself. I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't work on it. You know, I never told my sponsor that at that time, I never told my sponsor that it happened. You know, that person would leave the room and they would come back and ask me to sponsor them again. And I would say, no, I can't do it. But then a year later, I would do it again. And I finally told my sponsor about it, and he said, you cannot sponsor anybody for a year. It was hard, you know, because for a long time, sponsorship was the only thing that kept me in these rooms. Me being a sponsor was the only thing that kept me here. You know, I'm not proud of what I did. I've made my amends, you know, to those guys. You know, and I thought through working my steps that I wouldn't do it again, and that relationship that I was talking about that got me to the point where I wanted to run into a fucking train was that mistake happening all over again. And I told my sponsor, and he said, you can't sponsor that guy. You got to drop him and drop him now. And I did. And I said, stay away from me. And we couldn't. And we got in that relationship, and like I say, it was fucking terrible. And what I learned from that is, not only was I killing a newcomer, I was killing myself. Today, I don't mess with anybody in the program. If I think for a minute that you are smiling at me the wrong fucking way, you got to get away from me. When I have that thought in my head, if I can't get a hold of my sponsor, I call one of my sponsees, or I call somebody in my support group. Hey, let me tell you what happened in this meeting today. And they tell me what I need to hear. Not what I want to hear. Because sometimes what I want to hear is I want to hear them say, it's going to be okay. You know, just try not to do it this time. It's going to be okay. No, it's not going to be okay. Because anytime I do something that's going to hinder my recovery, I'm setting myself up for a relapse. I'm not trying to hinder my recovery today. I've struggled too long in this program because I didn't use sponsorship on whether I wanted to stay or wanted to go. Because there's a question in your step guide about, do I have enough knowledge about my disease? You know, I don't have enough knowledge about my disease that if I leave the rooms and think that I'm going to be okay, if I don't use, I'm going to be okay. Because I work my steps and I have a sponsor that drills in my head about the spiritual principles of this program and talks to me about my recovery and talks to me about me, that I'm not going to be the person that don't go to a meeting for a year. And I'm not going to work a step for a year. And I'm not going to have any recovery in my life for a year and think that I'm going to be okay. Because if that one person comes in my life that may be using, and I'm thinking I'm going to be all right hanging out with these guys for a little while, or that I go home to my family and think that I'm going to be okay hanging out with my family for a while. Because the one time that I did quit using on my own, it took one time. Just one time. I didn't use for like 3 years. And my grandfather died. And I went to the drug of my choice at that time. And it took one hit. And I was off to the races. And at that time I was like maybe 22. I got clean when I was 34. It just took that one time. So I don't think that I can just not come to meetings anymore, not have a sponsor anymore, and think that I'm going to be okay. You know, there are days that I just don't like being a sponsor because my disease tells me they putting too much on you. You know, you got 4 or 5 and they're telling you all this stuff and they're not working steps and their life is going all haywire and you don't have anything else to give anymore and you just need to quit sponsoring and your life will be easier. And then I shared that in a meeting one time. And I was told that out of all the time I'd been around and I had acted out and acted crazy up in a meeting, because I have been crazy in a meeting, just sharing some crazy ass shit because I was angry at somebody. You know, I wasn't sharing my experience, strength, and hope. I was just sharing my anger at them. And they said if your sponsor had given up on you because he thought you was too much, where would you be? It kind of pissed me off because I knew it was true. You know, honestly, I love the sponsor guys. I get more out of sponsoring them. You know, they teach me. Because when I become unteachable, I'm in a dangerous spot. You know, I have some that have relationship problems. Well, that's right up my fucking alley. We're in the same boat. Come on, get in. Let's talk about this. You know, I have some that are stubborn. Hell, they're just like me. You know, I have some that get down on themselves because they just think that I'm not worth anything. I've been there, done that. I have a key tag for that. I love sponsorship today. I love my sponsor. You know, he guides me through my steps. He never tells me that you need to do this. He suggests to me. You know, I was told when I first came around to go to a meeting, sit and listen. Keyword being listen. And then watch. You know, find somebody you want to be your sponsor and listen to how they share in a meeting, and then watch how they act after the meeting. Go up and ask that person to be your sponsor. You know, I see people going to meetings and they get around the newcomers and they tell you, hey, you need a sponsor, here's my number, call me. And I want to walk over and tell that person, what the fuck are you doing? This is not about fucking putting another notch in your belt. This is about helping a newcomer. But because I know my mouth and I know who I am today, that I don't do that. I want to. I really want to, but I don't. So if you have somebody that's walking up to you and telling you this, or they walk up to you and say, well, if you need a sponsor, I'm going to be your sponsor until you find one. Walk the fuck away. Walk away. Fucking run. I was told a long time ago, we do not do that. You know, I was guilty of it a couple of times. You know, my sponsor does not talk harsh. He don't raise his voice. He's about this tall. He got a lot of guns. And he's real subtle when he talks to me. But that day he wasn't. He said, we just don't fucking do that shit around here. You need to rethink some shit. Go home and read. I said, all right, man, all right. Never done it since. Never. Sponsorship has saved my life in this program so many times. So many times. When I thought my fucking world was falling apart and I had nobody to turn to, my sponsor was always there. And when his life started falling apart, I did not give up on him and run. He's an addict just like me, and I was always there for him. You know, I love my sponsor today. Love him. You know, he's been going through some things. I've been going through some things. Somebody suggested I change sponsors. I told him, get the fuck away from me. My sponsor knows who I am because I trust him. And I do mean I trust him with everything about me. If you don't have a sponsor, I suggest you please find one that you can work with. If you can't work with that one, find a new one. And if you can't work with that one, find a new one. You can do that. I found the one that worked for me, and we've been together for 10 years. I love him. You know, they told me I didn't have to love my sponsor. They just told me I had to go over my steps with him. They told me I had to be honest with him. I said, you don't gotta like him. At first, I was scared to death of him. It's like I said, he had a lot of fucking guns. But today, he's taught me how to shoot those guns. You know, I ain't went hunting with him yet, but I'm going to. Because that's just another thing that we'll have in common. That I can sit down and say, hey, this is what I got going on with me. And we can do it while we sit in the deer stand somewhere. Or in a duck blind or some shit, I don't know. What the fuck they call it. But I want to do it. You know what I'm saying? I want to do it. You know, like I said, if you don't have a sponsor, get one. There's an IP, it's orange. It's IP 11, right, Mike? IP 11, read it. Twice. You know, sponsorship is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing, you know. Like I said, it saved my life, and it's taught me how to love other people, you know. I'm done.